Well, good morning all for this Tuesday morning. Although when I'm recording it, it's actually the day before. And so, yeah, it's a little bit of a time warp. These vlogs, you get these vlogs that are they're not even 24 hours old, but sometimes in the morning you hear from me at night, and this is one of those times. And today I have an interesting thing to show you from under the microscope. Now, some of you may recognize this clip, but I want to play it again because this is Daisy when I first got some poops from her. And then I'm going to show you one from after she gets a dose of metronidazole. And so this is a good comparison contrast so you can see what the difference is. So this one is the earlier one. So I'm going to go ahead and play the clip complete with authentic audio.
This is a fecal smear for Daisy on, let's see, what is this? February 21st. We got this fecal. We're having troubles getting her all hydrated, but then I started just fogging her at night and making it a complete cloud that she was sleeping in, and we got a very nice, healthy fecal sample. Okay, so let's take a look at this high level. Wow. Remember last time we saw those flagellated protozoa? Oh, I can see them from here. Gosh, look at that. Look at all of them squirming around. Well, let's go ahead and take a look. Yikes! Holy moly. Son of Darrell. Wow. Oh, man. That is like distracting. I don't even...
All right, so when I saw that, sometimes I decide maybe I won't treat, maybe I will. This one was I'm gonna have to treat. And so I gave a dose of metronidazole, commonly called Flagyl, and I actually got a poop the next day. And ours the next day or two, I don't know, very soon after that. And I'd like to show you under the microscope that poop.
All right, so this is a fecal sample, a direct smear from Daisy, the carpet chameleon. Now, this is at the high magnification. And do you notice anything different? Here, I'll go ahead and show you a clip from the first time we looked. What's different? One dose of metronidazole, also called Flagyl, which is meant to get rid of flagellated protozoa.
Holy cow. What a difference. Even I was surprised that there was so much of a difference. But it does show you that these medicines are effective. Now, granted, I'm waiting for the next poop, and so it's not certain that everything is taken care of until I have 3 negatives. But there you have it. Now, you'll also see, if you remember from the first one, how much we saw in that poop, and it was just all over the place. And in the second one, they've disappeared. And so I think this demonstrates just how much necrotic tissue is going to be inside the body when these protozoa, as small as they are, boy, there's a lot of them, when they all die. And those have to be processed by the chameleon's body. I would think that most of those in the gastrointestinal tract would go out with the next poop. But metronidazole is highly effective. Metronidazole gets into every bodily fluid and goes through the organs. And so if there are parasites, maybe the protozoa in the gastrointestinal tract just went out with the poop. But if there are any other parasites anywhere else, all those bodies will have to be filtered through the blood, filtered through the liver, and all of that. So this is where it's not entirely clear what the best decision is. But in this case, I felt strongly that I had to do it. And so I did, and we got rid of the flagellated protozoa. And in her, I haven't seen any other nematodes or coccidia. So I'll give you 2 more fecals and we'll see if she truly is clear. And this also highlights why it's important for us to understand not only the parasites, but the medicines that we're using. Now, it's not necessarily easy to look into these different medicines that we use. I mean, fenbendazole, metronidazole, what exactly do they do? You can easily find what they're used to treat. So when you have a certain kind of parasite, what medicine do you use? But it takes a little bit of digging to figure out what exactly that medicine does to the parasite. Does it kill it? Does it just interrupt with its ability to absorb nutrients? And this can help you decide how often to use that medicine, because at what point in the life does it just disrupt a certain part of the life, or does it actually kill the parasite? So one resource that I'd like to tell you about that you may not have known existed is an online e-zine called chameleonnews.com. It's the Chameleon's e-zine. This was the first digital chameleon e-zine, and it came out just after the turn of the century, way back then. And this was my first outreach. I worked on it with 2 other guys, and we did an e-zine, a digital magazine, much like I'm doing now with the Chameleon Journal. But this was my first attempt at creating a community resource, just like my podcast. And in fact, the podcast comes from what I learned from doing the e-zine. And it was a bi-monthly digital magazine. And I had people from around the community write articles. Just like with the podcast, I have people around the community do interviews. And so you could learn from people around the world. Originally, I did that with the Chameleon's e-zine. And I had people from around the world writing articles. Now, one thing I found, this is kind of an aside to the story, it was very difficult to find people to write articles. It was no problem getting people who say, yeah, I'd love to. But if you've ever tried to write an article, yikes, that takes a lot of effort. The spirit may be willing, but boy, is it hard to look at a blank sheet of paper and put down an article if you haven't done that before. I ended up ghostwriting so many of those articles to the point where I would, and you can see how this starts the podcast. I would interview them and I would take notes, very careful notes, and I would write the article for them, send them the article. They would redline it. They would say, no, you got to change this. And so it was all their information. I was just being the workhorse. And I had to do that with so many of these articles because people just didn't have time to sit down and write an article for this magazine. But I did do a lot of that. And a lot of people wrote. I mean, this wasn't all of them. And I got some incredible information. And this actually has something to do with what we're talking about because I bumped into Dr. Dmitry Vasiliev, who was a senior herpetologist at the Moscow Zoo in Russia, and he happened to be staying at the same house that I was in the highlands of Java in the early 2000s. We were there for different reasons. I wanted to raise chameleons, and he wanted to do research on things that had venom. And so we let each other do what we were going to do, but we shared a microscope, and I was able to get some very cool articles with him because he had a specialization in parasites. And so if you go back to chameleonnews.com, you're going to be able to see a number of articles that by Dr. Dmitry Vasiliev. And I know I'm pronouncing that wrong. I called him Dr. Dmitry. But we went over different kinds of parasites and we went over the medicines. And so if you're wondering what fenbendazole does, metronidazole does, well, then go to chameleonnews.com and take a look at the article reference that there's a very cool guide and look for articles by Dr. Dmitry Vasiliev. And Yeah, I like to go back to chameleonnews.com. It's some great memories. That was in 2002 that we started that. But that was the first time that I did a project where I was wanting to bring the community together. And if you go back and you look at what I did there, you will see it so well. And it's like the perfect start for what eventually became the Chameleon Academy podcast. Now, there's over 10 years of difference between these two projects. I worked on the Chameleon News e-zine for 2002 to I think 2004. And then I turned it over to Dr. Chris Anderson, and he took it from there and did a whole lot of other issues. And so there's a huge reference back there. And you're thinking, oh, boy, what's that? Over 20 years ago? That's old information. Yeah, you might be surprised at how many things we're talking about today that we were talking about back then. And things like Batril and the worms, nematodes, they're the same. They're the same. And one of the first articles that I had somebody write for us was about keeping chameleons in solid side enclosures. Oh my goodness, can you believe we are still talking about that almost 25 years later, 20 years later? Yeah, some things never change. We're hoping they change. They're kind of slowly changing, but you can go back there and you'll see a lot of the same things being talked about. And if you go back to the first episode, that's where first talked about gradients. My podcast, my second episode was about gradients. No, the first one. My first episode was about gradients. And that was one of my first articles in 2002 in the Chameleon's e-zine about gradients. And so those were some really good times, I just want to recommend that you check out chameleonnews.com and just take a look at what we were talking about then. And oh my goodness, you take a look at some of the articles that I wrote and some of those profile pictures, you get to see young Bill. And have you ever heard of chameleon feeder run cups where the back has something that the insects can crawl up? Well, it was invented in 2003 by me. And you can see the first time it was published in this Chameleon's online e-zine in 2003. Hints and Tips Troubleshooting by Bill Strand. And oh my goodness, those were very primitive, but it worked. And the whole reason why I had to come up with that is because I was acclimating a whole lot of wild-caught chameleons, and they would just not recognize bugs in the dish, because when you put bugs in a dish, they'd like to just settle down and they won't move and the chameleons won't see them. So I said, okay, I'm going to put this run back that they could climb up. And oh my goodness, it worked so well. And all of a sudden the wild caughts would start eating the insects. And so that was why I did it. That's where it came from. And it has worked wonderfully ever since. And in this same article that I'm looking at right now, it's still talking about the same methods. If you look at the methods I talked about when hand feeding the shamrock chameleons just a couple of vlogs ago, well, I was saying the same thing back then. I go and look in this article and get behind the food so the chameleon can keep an eye on you. Where have you heard that before? Place the cage above eye level. Yeah, you see, a lot of this information has been around for a while. Introduce a cricket to get breeding. Yeah, that's one where you release, if you've got two chameleons, the male and female, they're just kind of staring at each other doing nothing. If you release a cricket on there, that like breaks the tension. One of them goes for the cricket and then they can do sometimes it starts to mating. And then give a man his self-confidence. Have I told you guys this story? All right, you know what? I'm going to tell you this one story before we call it a day, and I let you get on with your wonderful Tuesday. So I had this pair of Jackson's chameleons, but the male was so much smaller than the female, and she would intimidate him. So I would put them together. There would be no breeding because she would just look at him and he'd run away because he was scared of her. And so I was trying to figure out how in the world am I going to get this breeding going. And so I had this idea of how am I going to get his self-confidence up. And so what I did is I took a mirror and I put it up to him. And of course, he saw another Jackson's chameleon. And so his first instinct was to run away. Well, I put a mirror up. He saw the Jackson's chameleon. And before he had a chance to turn around and run away, the mirror ran away. And so he saw his opponent run away. And I kept doing this day after day after day. And I could notice him getting his confidence. And it came to the point where I put the mirror up, and instead of him backing away or hesitating, he actually started puffing it up and going at the mirror. And I said, oh my goodness, I think we've cracked the code. And so the next time I put the male and female together, she puffed up a little bit and he would have nothing of it. He just went and just ignored. And well, yes, I did get babies out of that one. So there's a little fun story for you about giving a chameleon his confidence back. Oh, it has been a wonderful time here in the chameleon world. I have so many memories. And going back and looking at the chameleons easing, it brings back a lot of them. So, but I'm making new memories now, and I'm glad that you're here with me making these memories. Although one last thing, are you able to hear that commotion in the background? The sound of cages opening and closing? That is Yvette in the next room taking care of all of her Uroplatus fantasticus. And I kind of like it. She often will, if she knows that I'm recording, she'll try to be very quiet, and she'll keep it down as much as possible and try to be respectful. But tonight and some nights, I don't let her know that I'm recording, and I don't make a big noise about it because it's nice to hear her working in the other room. It's a reminder of the very cool life that we have, to where we're immersed. We're both immersed in the reptile world. Her with her Uroplatus fantasticus, me with chameleons, and we both have things we're trying to accomplish. They're different, but they are connected by the reptiles. And I gotta say, it is such a very cool thing to be able to do something like this with someone you love. And we're not in each other's things because we're not doing the same thing, but we're close enough that we have so much to talk about and we understand each other. And it's not always been this way, and who knows how long this little setup will last. You never know in life. And we have bounced around, we have seen so much, have done so much, and have had different aspects to our life that I'm just doing everything I can to appreciate this time that we have right now. And I think that's important, is to appreciate what we've got. Life will never be perfect, and our situation right now here isn't perfect. And I want to enjoy every bit of it. So you know what? While I'm doing my vlogs, she can go and make as much noise as she wants in there. And that noise is going to be special to me. Appreciate every bit of that noise that I hear. And I appreciate every one of you, especially those of you who are crazy enough to get up early enough to be on the chat here. You're probably in the chat right now saying hello or sharing what your day is going to be like. And me, we're going to be hearing about Derpy or Lazarus or Bilbo Baggins, all of our favorite chameleons. And so I think this time here that we have together is special as well. And I'm going to be appreciating every bit of it that we have. So thank you very much for being a very special part of my day. And now I think I've got to send all of us out into that world. So please take care of yourself, be excellent to each other, and I'll see you next time.